3 spine-chilling Valentine's Day horrors. Terrifying tales of sinister love unveiled. In the quiet suburbs of Ohio, the moon hung low, casting ominous shadows over Jenna and Mark's home. This Valentine's Day, they planned to celebrate a new chapter in their lives' engagement. But the thrill of their love soon twisted into something more sinister. With every beautiful decoration Jenna set, a chill crept into her spine. Little did they know a dark presence lurked, waiting for the right moment to strike. The couple was excited, but Jenna's father frequently warned them of dark forces, claiming threats emerged hidden behind the white picket fences of their neighborhood. "Be careful," he'd say, glancing over his shoulder like shadows carried whispers. They dismissed his fears, deeply in love and certain nothing could disturb their happiness. She arranged blood-red roses on the table. A chilling wind knocked. At the door, Jenna found a bouquet, each petal soaked in deep crimson, accompanied by a handwritten note. The words sent shivers down her spine, twisted sentiments, trying to tear their love apart. "True love will always betray," it read. Mark stood in silence, his expression darkening, the joy slipping from his face. Every new note made him retreat further into darkness, as the warmth they once shared transformed into unsettling edginess. "Just a prank," Jenna insisted, feeling a tremor in her hands. But Mark felt differently, and his distance only made the words coil tighter around her heart. "We need to focus on tonight," she pushed, her voice trembling between anxiety and resolve. "It's our night." Then, flyer after flyer adorned their doorsteps, promising a Valentine's event at the abandoned community center, an escape from their growing fears. "Let us go," Jenna exclaimed, hoping to chase away apprehension. Mark hesitated but eventually agreed. Lured in by the hope of rekindling joyous feelings, as they entered the decrepit center. Flickering lights above cast sinister shapes against the peeling walls. Hushed voices whispered folklore, a vengeful specter punishing those with unfaithful hearts. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, pressing in around them. Jenna swallowed hard, her heart racing, but she tried to dismiss the growing tension. Then, the air thickened with impending doom. Suddenly, laughter echoed around them, familiar yet twisted. The neighbors they once trusted appeared, transformed faces hardening into masks of resentment and jealousy. Mark's hand trembled, brushing against Jenna's with unease. She could feel the trust unraveling, shadows of their past fears surfacing. Could the whispers be true? Were they being watched? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. They tried to leave, but cold dread surrounded them. They were being hunted, a shadow lurking, always out of sight. Panic set in, breathing felt suffocating. Jenna's heart raced, and she grabbed Mark's arm as they sprinted through the neighborhood streets, their once safe haven twisted into a nightmare. They turned corners, the figures shifted from benign neighbors to lurking demons. Everything had changed, and now it felt like love was a weapon forged to betray. As they stumbled through the oppressive night, the sinister laughter echoed, cosmic laughter filled with their worst secrets. Every glance back revealed a darkness, a specter creeping closer. Mark tightened his grip, urging her forward as trust waned. Love soured, cloaked in paranoia, until their urgent breaths intertwined with the night's dreadful silence. What haunted them wasn't just an outsider, but something reflective of their deepest fears. In the chilling revelation of their reality lay the very essence of survival. Could they escape this night together? Or would love itself become their worst enemy? Jenna pushed forward, fear drumming a relentless rhythm in her chest. The shadows danced mockingly around them, whispering secrets she couldn't quite grasp. Mark's grip on her arm tightened, his knuckles white, reflecting the panic clawing at their sanity. "Where do we go?" he gasped, his breath hitching in the night air. The community center lay behind them, an ominous silhouette, but the street ahead felt just as suffocating. The laughter echoed, warped and haunting, a cruel taunt that settled deep in her bones. "Let us just keep running," Jenna shouted, desperation flooding her voice. They sprinted past houses that stood like silent witnesses, their windows obscured, yet she felt eyes on them watching, judging, waiting. Her heart raced, each thud a reminder that time was slipping away. Suddenly, Mark stopped. His body stiffened, head tilting, as if he heard something she couldn't see. Jenna turned. Her own senses heightened, straining against the night's pressure. The air felt electrified, a foreboding weight settling around them. "Do you hear that?" Mark whispered, his voice barely above a trembling breath. She shook her head, but panic filled the silence. The laughter was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness that hung heavy, waiting. Then came the voice, soft at first, layered with malice. "True love will always betray," it curled around them like a vine, tightening, choking the air from Jenna's lungs. Her eyes darted around the street, but they were alone, or so it seemed. "The note," Mark breathed, eyes wide. "They know we need to get out of here." Without another word, they turned down a narrow alley, clutching onto the hope it held as a way out. Jenna's mind raced. She thought of the neighbors, their laughing faces twisted, the notes left like curses. Each step felt heavier as a cold dread settled in the pit of her stomach. Had they been drawn into something evil without realizing? As they reached the end of the alley, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. Jenna's breath caught. It was Mrs. Hargrove, their once sweet neighbor, now exuding a vibe so malevolent it sent ice through her veins. "Leaving so soon?" She cooed, her smile wide but cruel. "We were just getting to know one another intimately." "Get away from us," Mark shouted, pushing Jenna behind him. His bravado echoed in the alley, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. Mrs. Hargrove took a slow step forward, and Jenna felt the ground shift beneath them. Other figures materialized from the darkness. Neighbors they had once waved to, now gathered in a malicious circle prying, thirsty for something Jenna couldn't comprehend. "This isn't just a game, dear," Mrs. Hargrove said, her voice dripping with poisonous sweetness. "It's a test, a show of true loyalty." Suddenly, the urge to flee struck Jenna like a lightning bolt. Without thinking, she grabbed Mark's hand, pulling him away. They dashed deeper into the alleys, every footstep echoing their mounting dread. "Where are we going?" Mark panted, turning, panic flickering behind his eyes. "They're everywhere." "I don't know. Just keep moving." But the laughter returned, thick and suffocating. Each note they had dismissed as a prank now felt like chains binding their fate. Jenna glanced back, the Sinister gathering in pursuit, shadows casting long and dark behind them. "Trust is a fragile thing," the voice taunted as they sprinted. "What happens when it breaks?" With their hearts pounding, they reached a fork in the alley, one path leading to the main road, the other veering dangerously into a darker corner of their neighborhood. A glimmer of light flickered down the path towards the main road, but it felt deceptive. "Mark, which way?" Jenna's voice trembled, uncertainty flooding her mind. Had their love survived enough to trust their instincts? But before Mark could reply, the darkness seemed to thicken, swirling around them like a tempest. Shadows stretched, reaching for them, intermingling with memories of laughter turned sinister. And then it hit her, the realization that love had never been enough. "Go left," Jenna yelled, her decision echoing against the darkness as they turned. The shadows lunged, and with a heart-stopping scream, Jenna felt Mark slip from her grasp, a hand pulling him into the tormenting abyss. "Mark!" she screamed, terror ripping through her. But just like that, a hand gripped her shoulder. She turned wide-eyed, to face another shadowy figure, this one wearing a mask, its expression an eerie grin. "Now, let us really see how true your love is in the depths of horror." Jenna had to wonder. How far would she go to save him? Would she let the darkness consume her, or fight back even when it felt like love was the very thing tearing them apart? Jenna's heart raced, pounding furiously against her chest as she faced the masked figure. The grin beneath the mask was wide, a grotesque mockery of pleasure. She didn't know if it was male or female underneath, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was survival and locating Mark before it was too late. Let him go. Her voice cracked, desperation pouring from her. The shadows shimmered around them, drawing unnaturally close as if feeding off her fear. Ah, true love, the figure crooned, its voice dripping with mock sympathy. What a beautiful but fragile thing. Do you think you can save him, sweetheart? Jenna squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back tears of rage and helplessness. She had to think. Drawing a shaky breath, she forced her eyes open. What do you want? She asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear gripping her insides. The figure tilted its head, the mask tilting slightly to one side, enjoying the moment as if Jenna's fear was a sweet dish savored slowly. Only a simple test for you. Would you sacrifice your own love to save him? The shadows whispered, a discordant melody of temptation. Jenna's instinct screamed danger, but the terror that shot through her as she thought of Mark's scream was blinding. The abyss tugged at her emotions, dark and inviting, as if it could swallow her whole to spare him. Tell me what I need to do. She clenched her fists, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. Oh, it's quite simple. You must choose, the figure said, voice croaking with glee. You can dive into the shadows, join the ones who have already sacrificed for love. Or you can run but know that in doing so you may never see him again. Behind Jenna, the laughter from the gathering shadows twisted into cackles, filling the alley with pure malevolence. The figures shimmered, their faces twisted into familiar shapes, neighbors she'd once known. Their eyes gleamed as she caught a glimpse of fragmented smiles and horrified expressions, now hardened by darkness. Join us. Jenna, Mrs. Hargrove's voice penetrated the chaos, her voice smooth and inviting. It's almost easier here. We are free of the pain of lost love. No, Jenna shouted. She took a step back from the masked figure, the weight of invisible eyes pressing against her. Panic surged through her, fighting with the crushing grip of despair. Make your choice, the figure demanded, the grin widening sinisterly. Love or freedom, you cannot have both. A breathless moment swallowed her thoughts, the weight of the world hanging in balance. Every second felt like an eternity, and behind her, she imagined Mark's face, vulnerable and desperate, echoing in the darkness. The shadows shifted, whispering promises of sweet release, urging her to step closer. But the thought of losing Mark was an anchor holding her to reality, refusing to let her succumb. She spun back to the figure, defiance blooming in her chest. I choose him. But the air split with a spine-chilling laughter, vibrating through her bones. Then run, little dove. Run fast, or join the rest of them in their betrayal. With that, Jenna turned and sprinted into the deepening darkness, adrenaline propelling her forward, every shadow clawing eagerly at her heels. The alley twisted, each turn leading her deeper into the unknown as her mind raced with possibilities. Had Mark been taken? Was he still fighting? Jenna pushed the nagging doubts aside, focusing on one thought. Find him. Ahead, she spotted a flickering light, perhaps a way out. Her heart raced anew, igniting a spark of hope. But as she neared the edge of the alley, the ground trembled beneath her, and a chilling realization struck. The laughter returned, louder, more powerful, a sinister chorus that clawed at her thoughts. Nothing is ever as it seems. The flickering light dimmed, swallowed by the shadows, leaving her in a suffocating void once more. She stumbled, caught between the fading glimmer and the abyss behind her. Her pulse quickened. Choices weighed heavy on her mind. Would she find Mark? Or would the shadows consume her as they cackled in delight at her? Turmoil? Jenna's breath hitched in her throat as she stepped closer to the light. But with every desperate heartbeat, she wondered. In a world where love can create monsters, what else might she have to sacrifice? The shadows pulsed around Jenna, swirling like dark smoke, whispering promises meant to ensnare her heart. She felt the weight of their malice, a heavy blanket pressing down as she fought to breathe. The flickering light vanished completely, leaving nothing but darkness that pressed in from every side, warping her sense of direction. She stumbled, losing her footing in the chaos, and panic seized her. "Mark!" she shouted, her voice echoing unnaturally, swallowed by the gaping void. Laughter erupted from the depths, a cacophony of twisted voices. "You won't find him here," they jeered, mocking her pain. "He chose you and now you're adrift." A sharp pang of guilt twisted inside her. What if she was too late? What if Mark was already in the clutches of the shadows? Desperate thoughts clawed at her mind. Every second mattered. Yet the darkness conspired against her. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to will away the fear. "Focus, Jenna," she whispered to herself. "You have to stay strong. You can't let them win." Steeling herself, she opened her eyes. The acrid smell of decay filled the air. She noticed something shimmer in the corner of her vision, a glint from something metallic. It beckoned her from the edge of the shadows, a reminder that hope still lay ahead. With each breath, she willed herself to move toward it. As she crept forward, the darkness rippled with discontent, tendrils reaching out, brushing against her skin like icy fingers. "Come back to us, Jenna," they hissed. "We are many. You cannot escape what you truly are." A pulse drummed softly underfoot, a heartbeat that matched her racing own. Awareness sparked within her. "What do you mean?" Jenna gasped, whipping her head toward the voices. Each whisper felt charged with indignation, an echo of something she buried deep. "Your love is what binds you," they shrieked in unison. "You tread the same path as the rest. You will make your choice, and we will feed." Jenna felt the shadows tug, relishing her doubt. "No," she growled, determination rising through the panic. "I refuse to be like them." With a surge of adrenaline, she propelled herself forward. The metallic shimmer grew brighter, reflecting her hope. It wasn't just light. It was a knife, embedded in the earth, a flicker of reality in an ocean of darkness. Just as her fingers grazed the cold handle, the laughter swelled, spinning around her like a cyclone. "You think you can fight this? Love has always been your weakness, and now it will betray you." A sudden explosion of pain shot through her hand as darkness constricted around her wrist with a bone-crushing grip. Jenna screamed, yanking away. The weight of shadows bore down, and the chill seeped into her bones. She pulled the knife from the ground, its presence grounding a familiar weight that calmed her racing heart. "I won't let you take him," she screamed, adrenaline electrifying her body. But just then, the shadows recoiled, revealing the form of a man, Mark, his eyes wide with fear, hidden beneath layers of dark mist. He was there but trapped. "Jenna!" he cried, voice cracking. "Help me!" Despair mingled with resolve, driving her forward. Jenna sprinted toward him, but the shadows latched onto her limbs like chains, dragging her down. "Run!" Mark pleaded, tears building in his eyes, devoured within the swirling tendrils. "Get out while you can." "No," she shouted back defiantly. "I won't leave you." The ground quaked beneath them, a low growl swelling around them. The shadows hissed, voices boiling with fury. "Choose, Jenna. Choose now, or lose him forever." Clenching her jaw, Jenna raised the knife, her heart a chaotic thunder. "I choose love. Always." But there was no escaping the suffocating grip closing around her, dimming her courage as Mark's face faded. Shadows surged around Jenna, whispering her darkest secrets. Love was a monster, her heart the battleground. But it wasn't over yet. An unexpected calm settled for a moment as she felt something shift, an awareness that surged like electricity. The knife pulsated in her grip, a lifeline bound not just by faith but by sacrifice. The laughter faded momentarily. The shadows shifted, almost hesitantly. The decision lay heavy in the air. Jenna's heart thumped a steady battle cry. She knew she didn't just have to fight for herself. With every ounce of strength, she screamed into the abyss, "You will not take us." And the shadows answered back with shrieks that threatened to drown her resolve. Darkness enveloped her entirely as she lunged into the fray, fighting for love and truth. But as she fell deeper, another realm emerged, an unseen force waiting to claim her. What awaited her on the other side? And would Mark still be there when she found him? The shadows whispered sweet promises, echoing warnings that clawed at her mind as she dove into the unknown. Time slipped away, and the ground beneath rattled with chaos. A chance to change everything lay ahead. But would she have the courage to confront it? The darkness gripped Jenna like a vice, a cold, suffocating embrace that made her gasp for breath. She felt her muscles tighten, and the knife slipped from her fingers, clattering to the ground with a dull thud. The shadows pulsed hungrily, entwining around her like a snake preparing to strike. Panic surged again, raw and fierce. "Mark," she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of hopelessness. The laughter erupted again, cruel and mocking. "You thought you could save him? Yes, not worth the fight." The shadows shifted, swirling away from her, and Jenna caught a glimpse of Mark's pale face, twisted in terror. "Jenna," he shouted, desperation lacing his words. "You have to fight them." She wrestled against the oppressive darkness, forcing herself to stand. The world turned inside out, up was down, left blurred into right. Her heart raced, pounding a frantic rhythm drumming in her ears. "I won't give up," she declared, summoning every ounce of her will. But the shadows twisted again, whispering promises of despair. "What if he betrayed you? What if he chose us first?" They hissed, their voices slithering into her mind like poison. A flicker of doubt sprung within her, burrowing deep. No, no. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting against the memories of Mark's past betrayals, the arguments, the secrets, the discarded promises. "I know him. Do you?" The shadows laughed, a cacophony of anguished voices echoing around her. "He chose you, and now you must choose. Who will you be?" The ground trembled again, a deep rumble that vibrated through Jenna's bones. In that moment of uncertainty, an image flashed in her mind. The knife, gleaming with a strange light, felt like it would be the key to breaking the grip of night. With ferocity ignited by love, Jenna plunged into the dark once more, grasping for the knife, praying it hadn't vanished. The icy tendrils clawed at her, pulling, tearing, but her determination surged like fire against the encroaching cold. "You can't extinguish what you didn't kindle," Jenna yelled, feeling the blade's cool metal beneath her fingers. It felt alive, connected to her heartbeat, and she gripped it tightly. "I choose love." A blinding light erupted as she thrust the knife forward. Light clashed violently against the shadows surging in. They shrieked, an agonized sound that sent shivers down her spine. The shadows flickered like dying embers, recoiling with every ounce of fury at her defiance. Mark's form materialized next to her, pulled from the depths of despair. "Jenna," he gasped, a mixture of hope and fear flooding his voice. "You did it. But we have to go now." Jenna felt the weight of darkness closing in, ever menacing, hungry for her vulnerability. "Come on," she yelled, pulling him along, willing him to stand firm against the fetid grip of despair. They stumbled together, anguish intermingling with that flicker of hope. But the shadows clawed back, sharper than before, their cries growing louder. "You think you can escape? You think love will save you?" "Together," Jenna screamed. She could feel the warmth of Mark's hand in hers. "Together we can break free." With a surge of combined strength, they plunged forward into the glimmering light, the blade slicing through the shadows encroaching on them, severing their ties to the darkness. The shadows shrieked louder, like banshees crying out in agony, crashing against them in a wave of darkness. But the light between them flared brighter. Then everything went silent. Jenna opened her eyes, breath quickening again. They were outside in the cold night air, but the atmosphere felt heavy, loaded with an unspoken dread. The shadows lingered, lurking at the edges of her vision, alive and waiting. "Did we make it?" Mark asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. But before she could answer, the ground beneath them began to tremble again, more vicious this time, beckoning the shadows back with a haunting wail. Dread clawed at her insides. This wasn't over. "Jenna, we need to," Mark started, but before he could finish, a horrific figure emerged from the darkness, its features indistinguishable but its intent clear. Jenna's heart sank. What had they unleashed? As the figure advanced, Jenna realized that the battle was far from over. Its eyes glinted with malice, a grotesque smile tearing across a face that was once a person. In that moment, she knew they were still trapped, fighting an enemy that had merely shifted shapes. "Run!" she shouted, the last shred of hope dwindling as the shadows moved in like a tidal wave. But they weren't fleeing alone anymore. What awaited them on the dark road ahead? And would they have the strength to escape, or would love become their downfall? Jenna's breath hitched as the monstrous figure loomed closer, towering over them, a grotesque silhouette against the dim moonlight. An unnatural chill snaked through her, freezing her instincts, rooting her feet to the ground. "Jenna, move!" Mark yelled, urgency streaking through his voice. She glanced back, the maddened eyes of the figure ready to consume them. It was like staring into an abyss filled with darkness. With a jolt, she tore her gaze away. They turned, racing down the path that had once felt so familiar, but was now steeped in a sinister energy that twisted the air around them. The ground quaked again, and they barely managed to stay on their feet. It felt as if the earth itself was conspiring against them. The shadows surged, a roiling mass that clawed at their heels with a silent fury, whispering lies, feeding off their fear. "You can't escape. Not now, not ever." Jenna fought back the rising dread. "We have to reach the trees. The light." She pointed ahead, straining against the night. The dense thicket loomed like a fortress of hope, a faint glimmer of safety among the dark. "Go. I'll hold it back," Mark shouted, determination coursing through him. "No." Jenna's heart raced, a terror breaking the surface of her defiance. "You can't trust me." He unsheathed a jagged piece of metal from his pocket, lighting the air around them with a shimmer of desperation. Jenna hesitated, torn between her love for him and the dark instinct to flee to safety. "Go," he screamed. She swallowed the bile of fear tightening in her throat, darting forward into the unknown, just beyond the edge of the trees. The sounds of snapping branches echoed behind her, the cacophony of a battle only just begun. Adrenaline surged through her as she ducked between gnarled trunks, weaving through the underbrush, the shadows still slithering at her heels. The forest was alive with its own kind of darkness, whispers curling around her like a shroud, luring her into despair. "You're alone now. You can't save him. No one can save you." "Shut up," she gasped, shaking her head, forcing herself to push deeper into the woods. She could feel Mark battling behind her, the echoes of struggle growing fainter, swallowed by the empty night. Then, all at once, a piercing scream shattered the air, a sound that stilled her blood. Her heart sank, heavy with dread. "Mark!" She stumbled back, her muscles twitching with panic as the shadows surged once more, transforming into a monstrous wave, poised to swallow her whole. "No!" A rage surged through her veins. She reached for the knife, still clinging to the remnants of power it had once held. But it felt dull, lifeless in her hand. Shadows twisted around her, and she knew they sensed her fear. Together she whispered, closing her eyes and reaching for that flicker of hope again, the love that propelled her forward even through despair. Suddenly, a scream echoed again, this time, closer. It was Mark. She turned back towards the chaos, heart racing with conflicting hopes. "No," she breathed, terror pooling in her gut. But then, in the heart of that darkness, a flicker of light shone through the trees. Was it possible? "Mark!" She screamed, the name wrenched from her lips like a prayer. She could barely see, but she had to believe he was still fighting, still alive against the crushing tide of shadows. Without thinking, she dashed back into the fray, fueled by desperate resolve. It felt like an eternity, a fight against the inevitable. Shadows clawed at her skin, pulling her back, but she pressed on, thoughts of Mark driving her forward through the suffocating black. Would she reach him in time? Could love break through terror? Or was she running toward an inescapable horror? The light flickered again, a beacon in an all-consuming darkness. Was it the moment they'd been waiting for, or a final trap before the end? Jenna's heart raced as she darted back toward the chaos, branches snagging at her clothes and tearing her skin. The forest felt alive, each whisper a dagger digging deeper into her mind. Shadows whipped around her, their icy tendrils wrapping around her throat, dragging her down, urging her to give in to despair. "You're too late," they hissed, the sound like dry leaves skittering across the forest floor. "Mark," she cried out, voice cracking. Ahead, the flickering light pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing her in, but every pulse seemed to dim with each anguished scream echoing through the trees. She broke into a sprint, desperate to bridge the distance that felt infinite, a chasm filled with dread. The darkness thickened, and each footstep sent ripples of terror down her spine. In her mind, images of Mark flashed, his warm smile, the laughter they once shared, now warped into haunting echoes. Could his fleeting resolve hold against the shadows? In the depths of her heart, a terrible thought clawed its way to the surface. What if he's already gone? She fought against it, gripping the knife tighter, its steel cold and heavy in her palm. The shadows recoiled from her fear, sensing her wavering heart. "Believe," she whispered, forcing the word through trembling lips, a mantra against the darkness as she neared the clearing. The light pulsed with a frantic energy, cutting through the shadowy haze. She hesitated, collecting her breath, steeling her resolve. "I won't be afraid," she vowed. But as she crossed the threshold of the trees, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Mark stood at the center, his back to her, facing the looming figure, a grotesque conglomeration of nightmarish forms, each one squirming and writhing, hungry for the taste of fear. The edges of the light seemed to sizzle against its flesh, but it was still so close, too close. Jenna felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, the earth responding to the monstrous presence. "Mark," she shouted again, the word mingling with raw desperation. He turned, and for a heartbeat, hope flickered in his eyes before it was snuffed out by the overwhelming darkness. The figure lunged, and Jenna cried out, feeling the surge of fear swallow her whole. It was as if the very light they fought for was being devoured, consumed by the horror they faced. "Jenna!" Mark's voice surged through the chaos, laced with panic that tore through her heart. "Get back!" But there was no retreating now. It would only tighten the grip of despair. Instead, Jenna planted her feet, grounding herself. She could feel the warmth of the knife against her palm and the weight of her love for Mark surging through her. "I will save you." She rushed forward. "Jenna, don't!" Mark screamed, but she charged ahead, determination eclipsing fear. The air around her crackled, filled with tension, a reckoning waiting to unfold. She launched herself towards the figure, raising the knife. A surge of adrenaline flooded her veins, each heartbeat echoing the resolve to fight, to slam the blade into the heart of this monstrous nightmare. But the shadows erupted, writhing in unison, countering her every move. They unleashed a howl that rattled her bones, igniting a storm of panic. She stumbled, confusion sweeping over her as the light flickered wildly, casting macabre shapes against the trees. "Together," she cried, hoping as a fervent prayer escaped her lips, but the light began to fade. Suddenly, every shadow converged, and Jenna felt herself being pulled toward the endless darkness, gravity twisting against her. A stifled gasp escaped her as she reached for Mark, who was now seamlessly entwined with the shadows, his eyes glazed, lost in despair. "No!" she screamed, the empty sound of it echoing back to her, as the shadows began to pull her in, too. Jenna's last grasp on hope slipped like sand through her fingers. What was left for her now? The shadows loomed larger, ready to envelop them both. The darkness inhaled deeply, and all that echoed was her own frantic heartbeat. Would love be strong enough to keep them tethered? Or would they both be consumed by the endless abyss? Jenna felt the cold breath of despair wrap around her like a noose. The shadows surged, rushing toward her, eager to consume every last shred of her hope. She struggled, fighting the pull of the darkness as it slithered around her limbs, each tendril pressing against her skin. "Mark!" she screamed again, desperation flooding her voice. But there was no answer, just the haunting echoes of twisted laughter rising above the cacophony of their torment. With every ounce of strength, she focused on the knife, the cold steel grounding her to reality. She could see Mark, his blue eyes now clouded, the flicker of life within them slowly dimming. "Fight it, Mark," she urged, each word a lifeline flung into the depths of despair. But he remained motionless, a statue of sorrow. The darkness was relentless. Jenna felt its icy claws dig deeper, piercing her thoughts, planting seeds of doubt. "You cannot save him," the shadows whispered, voices merging into a chorus that echoed in her mind. "Just give in, no," she cried defiantly, her voice barely above a whisper, swallowing her fear and pushing it out into a scream. "I want to surrender to this." With a burst of resolve, Jenna lunged forward, the knife raised high. The light flickered just for a moment, casting fleeting glimmers of hope. She plunged the blade toward the encroaching shadows. The moment it made contact, a shock wave erupted, a pulse of vibrant energy surged through the air, sending the darkness reeling back. But it was only temporary. A moment's respite in the relentless battle of light versus dark. The shadows hissed, their grotesque forms contorting and shifting, losing their shape only to fold back together, more monstrous than before. The forest around them swirled, the trees moaning, leaves rustling ominously as if reacting to the otherworldly horror. "Get away from him," Jenna shouted, the frantic energy in her voice rising like smoke from kindling. She felt the knife vibrate in her grip, responding to her determination. She charged, adrenaline kicking in, adrenaline mingling with frantic fear. "Mark!" she yelled again, urgency weaving through her limbs as she fought to reach him, her love, her lifeline. But as she got closer, the figure of darkness pulled him deeper, further into the void where light seemed to perish. The figure turned its attention to her, eyes like coals of fire, swirling with malice. "You can't save him," it roared, a sound that shook the very ground beneath her feet. Its voice was a storm, a blizzard of ice-cold dread that crashed around her. "No," Jenna shouted, lunging with renewed purpose. She buried the knife into the earth, the blade quivering as it connected with something unseen. She felt a strange warmth ripple through the ground. It was as if the knife had awakened something beneath, a heartbeat, fierce and powerful. Jenna Mark's voice broke through the haze, faint but clear. "Hold on," she cried, sweat beading on her forehead as she directed her fear into sheer will, pulling the energy from the knife back toward him. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, twisting violently, and with a burst of energy, the darkness began to dissipate. The ghastly forms melted away into wisps of smoke, but Jenna knew it wasn't over. She felt laughter rise within the shadows, dark and mocking. "You think you can conquer despair?" The shadows clawed back, reclaiming their territory, but the light flickered ferociously in response. "Mark!" Jenna screamed, stretching out her hand, the warmth of the knife igniting her hope. Would it be enough to pull him back from the abyss? The ground trembled beneath her once more, vibrating with urgency and dread as the last remnants of the nightmarish figure began to unravel. Jenna held her breath, willing the warmth of love to break through. Would they escape this living nightmare, or would they be lost forever in the snare of the shadows? Just then, a piercing scream erupted from the forest, sending chills through her spine. Jenna's heart stopped. It was a sound filled with terror, unlike anything she had ever experienced. "Mark!" she gasped, dread clawing at her throat. But now, the darkness was rising once more, swelling like a tidal wave, ready to crash down upon them both. What new horror awaited them in the dark? The wave of darkness surged forward, a black tide swallowing the last glimmers of hope. Jenna felt her chest tighten, the air thickening with dread as the shadowy mass began to envelop her. She was a single candle flickering in a howling storm, and the knife slipped from her grip, clattering to the ground. "Mark!" she shrieked, each syllable laced with desperation. The forest around them seemed to listen, the trees whispering warnings in a language she couldn't decipher. All she could focus on was the image of him, the man she loved, slowly being pulled into a fathomless void. The laughter intensified, rising above the critical moments, twisting like barbed wire around her heart. Each chuckle cut deeper, taunting her feeble resolve. "You're losing him," the shadows murmured, their sinister voices draping like fog around her ears. Let him go, it's easier. No, Jenna shouted through her panic, fiercely shaking her head. She turned back to the knife, the last glimmering hope. It lay there, almost glowing in the thick, oppressive darkness. She had to reach it. She had to the ground beneath her shuddered, a monstrous heartbeat throbbing through the earth. Jenna felt it in her bones, overwhelming and sickening. The unnatural force pulsed like a living thing, and the shadows seemed to respond, writhing and howling in dismay. Mark, she cried again, scrambling forward, her hands brushing the leaves and dirt. The sound of his name echoed through the chamber of despair surrounding her, clawing at the very fabric of existence. She grasped the knife, the chill of the steel a welcome comfort. But even as she regained her hold on the knife, the shadows lunged at her, quick as lightning. They whipped around her with prying fingers, the weight of despair overwhelming. A gaze filled with malicious intent met her own. The figure loomed, a grotesque silhouette enveloping Mark in icy dread. Turn back, little girl, it hissed, a voice that sounded like rusted metal scraping against stone. You are not strong enough to face what lies behind the veil. Panic surged within her, a visceral, thunderous roar. She had to fight for Mark, for herself. With a primal scream, Jenna thrust the knife into the soil once more, invoking the warmth that had pulsed before. The ground shook violently as the knife struck deep, and the shadows reeled. A blinding light erupted from the blade, a beacon cutting through the darkness. Jenna dared to hope, her heart racing. Briefly, she could see Mark's face, his eyes filled with confusion but edged with life. Jenna, he shouted, fingers outstretched, yearning for her grasp. It ignited her spirit, her unwavering determination igniting a flame of fury deep inside. She rushed to repel the dark mass, each step fueled by an intense will as she pulled him closer, hand outstretched. But the shadows screamed in rage, swirling around them both, jealousy seeping from their grit. They lunged, trying to snatch him back, the laughter rising like a terrifying crescendo, a cacophony of evil promising death and despair. A clawed hand gripped Jenna's ankle, dragging her downward. She stumbled, her heart racing wildly as terror exploded in her chest. No, she cried one last time, the knife still glowing fiercely as she swung it, slicing through the grotesque form of darkness. In that instant, the world around them lurched, the edges splintering into chaos. Winds howled, leaves went sailing through the air, then silenced abruptly. Everything around her faded, her vision blurred, and for an agonizing moment, it felt like time stopped. Then, silence swallowed the air, heavy and suffocating. Jenna blinked in confusion, the tightness in her chest tightening to a painful grip. Where was Mark? Desolate panic pierced through her. Jenna, came a weak whisper, that name curling through her frightened thoughts like smoke. She whipped around, heart thundering in her chest as shadows lingered. But something was different. The laughter faded, almost sheepish in its retreat. Mark, Jenna croaked, fear tightening her throat as she searched the surrounding darkness. But as she spun on her heels, the shadows coiled back again, their threat far from over. Something dark was stirring in the forest's depths. Jenna could feel it. They were not alone. Not yet. Jenna! The voice called again, but not just Mark's. Others joined, lost souls, dripping with sorrow and dread. They were coming, and she had no idea what fate awaited them. A gasp escaped her lips. What awaited them from the depths was far beyond any horror she could imagine. Jenna stood trembling, consumed by fear, and darkness lashed around her like a storm. Shadows whispered threats, inching closer, curling around her heart. But then she heard it, a familiar voice soaring through the chaos, desperate yet hopeful. Jenna, keep fighting. Mark, she screamed, her voice breaking, fear clawing at her. She pushed forward into the murky void, arms outstretched, striving to reach him. Each step felt weighted by despair, but his voice flickered like a candle, urging her on. Don't listen to them. Mark's echo cut through the shadows, trying to smother her. You have the power to break this. The shadows recoiled, their whispers morphing into anguished screams. Time was not their ally. Jenna had to act. She could feel the knife pulsing in her hand, reminding her of the love binding them. "We fight together," she declared, summoning every ounce of strength, racing toward the source of his voice. Jenna burst through a barrier of darkness, and there he stood, Mark, tangled in shadow tendrils, fear etched all over his face. The gaping void between them seemed insurmountable, but she pressed on. "Hold on, I'm coming." The shadows lashed at her, shrouding her in icy fingers, attacking her with every vile memory they could conjure. "You can't save him. You're destined to fail," they hissed, their voices dripping with malice. "No," she roared, defiance surging through her veins. With a fierce swing, she drove the knife deep into the ground, driving away the creeping despair. Light exploded from the blade, ripping apart the darkness that suffocated them. The shadows writhed, helpless against the brightness. "Grab my hand," she shouted as the shadows recoiled. Mark reached out, fear and hope colliding in his wide eyes. "Jenna!" His voice was barely above a whisper, but she could see it, the flicker of life piercing through despair as her fingers closed around his. A jolt of energy pulsed through them. Together, they ignited a fire within that pushed back the more sinister shadows, a rush of warmth expanding through the cold night air. "We're stronger together," she breathed, their love forging a shield against the darkness surrounding them. And just when Jenna thought they'd declaim victory, the malevolent figure emerged, its grotesque visage twisting in fury. "You think you can break free? Love is nothing but a trap," it belted, voice echoing in the trees as it surged towards them. Shadows spiraled, weighty and relentless, threatening to pull them apart. "Stay with me," Jenna yelled, panic rising like bile in her throat. "I want to let go," Mark shouted defiantly, gripping her hand tighter. Drawing on that bond, Jenna unleashed a surge of determination that rippled through her body, fusing with Marcus' energy. The knife burned with fierce light as they faced the monstrous figure together. They wouldn't let fear win, not now, not ever. Together, they screamed in unison, plunging the knife toward the figure. A blinding light erupted from the knife as it struck true, sending shockwaves through the darkness. Each pulse shook the very foundation of the nightmare, scattering the shadows like leaves in a storm. The monstrous figure screeched, a sound that clawed at their ears. "You cannot defeat what lies within," it wailed, but with every heartbeat, the light grew stronger, clashing against the darkness. Jenna's heart raced as the shadows began to thin, the grotesque form collapsing, consumed by the very despair they thrived upon. She and Mark pressed forward, their strength intertwining, fueled as one. With the final thrust of the knife, the shadows disintegrated, a scream unraveling into silence. Breathless and exhausted, but alive, they stood together, the darkness finally lifting. Jenna blinked against the bright morning sun, the fight ebbing away into the horizon. "Is it over?" she whispered, barely daring to hope. Mark held her tight, warmth radiating from him, washing over her fears. "For now," he murmured, relief flooding his voice. In that moment, as dawn broke around them, she felt the weight of the night's terror lifting slowly, the remnants of darkness fading into the past. Love had won this battle, reminding them of the fierce power hidden within. They stumbled as they stepped from the shadows, hands still intertwined, hearts heavy yet lightened by a shared hope. There would be trials ahead, they knew, but if they fought together, they could face whatever the world threw at them. "Let us go home," Jenna said, a new resolve lighting her eyes. Hand in hand, they walked away from the shadows determined, unbroken, their love gleaming brighter than anything they had faced. And that, she realized, was the true power of love, not just survival, but the unwavering promise to stand strong together against any darkness. As they stepped into the brighter, warm light of dawn, Jenna whispered a silent vow. If shadows ever threatened to creep back, they would face them side by side, hearts intertwined. And that was how the story would end, not just a goodbye to the darkness, but a welcome embrace of the light ahead. You need to subscribe now to never miss the next exclusive. Stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep us going strong. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Did they really escape? Or is the darkness still lurking? Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel the way only true fans can.